This is Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles from Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. Retirement isn't just about saving, it's about having a strategy that helps you navigate market ups and downs, combat inflation, and secure the future you deserve. That's why Financially Fit Radio is here to tackle your biggest financial concerns, share actionable strategies, and help you move toward your retirement goals with confidence. And now, here's Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles.
Welcome back to another episode of Financially Fit Radio. I'm Cory Sickles with Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. If you'd like any information about anything that we discuss on today's show, feel free to give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit our website at safeharboroh.com. While you're on our website, feel free to click on that radio page. You can listen to today's show, you can listen to past shows, and you can also subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or Spotify. Also, feel free to check out today's show on our YouTube channel. Just type in Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. You can watch today's show. You can watch previous shows. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and also be kept up to date with all of our Financially Fit shorts as well. We put about 3 or 4 out on different types of financial topics a week. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's show. We're here to help and guide you to make sure you have the retirement that you want. And the best way to be able to make sure that you're on the right path is to give us a call, again, at 614-760-0670, or visit our website at safeharboroh.com to schedule a complimentary no financial obligation. Well, today we're going to talk about something I think everyone wants to know. And that is, are you ready to retire? And what is really the financial test that you have to kind of go through to make sure your day is going to be here or approaching? So before we dive into that, let me introduce to you my co-host this week and every week, and that's Tony Shore. Tony, how are you?
I'm doing great, Cory. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited about this one today. You've got a lot of great things lined up. I love it. But seriously, had a great week. Just awesome. Went out to eat with my son and his wife yesterday, my wife and I, and we hit an estate sale with them, just walked around, had a nice relaxing weekend, to be honest. I heard you worked outside though. You did a little yard work.
I did. Kind of, we did last year we got new concrete sidewalks.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to till around all that, level all that stuff out. Got to haul around a lot of dirt, a lot of good stuff. It was, it was in the 50s, which is actually a good time to be able to do all that.
Yeah.
Didn't sweat too much.
Yeah.
Went to the Columbus Crew game on Saturday night. Went to see Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan on Friday night. So, had a little bit of work and play in there. So, yeah, that's always good. We were talking before the show, heading out to Denver this weekend. One of the things I'm going to do is spend time with a good friend of mine, but we're also going to go see Snow Patrol.
Snow Patrol. Love that band. That's great. You and your wife checking that out. And I know you're going to go stay with another advisor, a couple of advisors in Denver. So
yeah,
probably talk some business, compare notes. I like that. We should not leave him waiting in the wings too long, Cory. We should probably bring Joe Shanks for an update, right?
Yeah, I think it's always a good thing to talk about. If you are already retired, or if you're not retiring, one of the big questions you always have is Medicare. So, Joe, what do you have to share with us today on Medicare?
We're going to talk about the different special election periods that are available to people when, we're coming down to the end of open enrollment, or OEP, right now. That ends on the last day of the month. So a lot of times people think that outside of that annual enrollment and the open enrollment window, that those are the only times you can enroll into Medicare. And that's not always true. There are special election periods or special situations for people that open up some more enrollment opportunities. Now, these are specific to, that exact scenario that I'm going to talk about. But just like I say, every week, this is what we're here for. So if you have questions, reach out to us. We're the experts on it to be able to find that option for you to make sure that you get the coverage that you need when you need it. So again, with open enrollment ending at the end of the month, some of the big special election periods that a lot of people qualify into, or we see that are the most common. One of the big ones that kind of goes with what Cory's going to talk about today is coming off of employer coverage. If you're retiring, you're more likely going to lose your employer health coverage, especially if your spouse isn't still working or has that employer coverage. There is a special election period that will open up for you that you can then enroll into your different Medicare options. Another one is if you are moving from an MAPD or a Medicare Advantage plan that has prescription drugs coverage, and you want to go into the Medigap or the Medicare supplement plans with a standalone prescription drug plan. There's a special election code for that. And also kind of vice versa. If you are on a Medicare Advantage plan, you had went to a supplement and you decided, you know what, this isn't for me. There's a 12-month calendar window that's called a trial right period. You can then move back and go back to your old supplemental plan and not have to go through the underwriting on that. If you have a loss of Medicaid or you have newly enrolled into Medicaid, that's going to open up another election window for you as well. Gain, lose, or have a change in LIS status. So LIS is low income subsidy, and that is a government subsidy that is there to help offset some prescription drug costs and things like that for you. So if you're enrolling to it, if you have lost it due to income changes or just any change in that, whether you've picked it up or lost it, there is a special enrollment period for that. A big one for a lot of people is we refer to it as a 5-star plan. So these Medicare Advantage plans are, rated by CMS and a star rating up to 5 stars. If you are wanting to enroll into a plan that has a 5-star rating, you can do that at any time throughout the year. So that is another special election period for you. One that might also fall into what Cory will talk about is if you have moved or changed your residence. I know a lot of people, that we're helping here at Safe Harbor, if they are fortunate enough to be able to retire and then move out of state and get somewhere where the weather's nicer and, some of those benefits or move closer to family, that's going to open up a special election period as well. Typically, you just have to move out of the zip code that you are in. So even if you're just within the state moving somewhere else, that can open up one. And another big one is chronic conditions. So there's certain types of plans out there that if you have qualifying chronic conditions, that's going to open up a window for you as well to find a plan that fits your needs and, is going to cover your doctors and your prescriptions for you at the lowest possible cost.
Well, it sounds like this for, listeners and viewers out there. And that is basically, if you don't like the coverage you're on, give us a call and we actually can see if you can fall into one of these categories to maybe look at a possible Medicare solution. So thanks, Joe. And again, if anyone wants to reach out to us, just give us a call at 614-760-0670. Or you can always visit our website at safeharboroh.com and we can help you with your Medicare needs as well.
Thanks for having me again. Have a good day, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. All right, Cory. Well, we're going to jump into it, right? Key financial indicators, you're ready to retire. And I think this says it all.
Retirement will be a wonderful adventure, and we'll do it together.
Yes.
So
it's always nice to do it together with someone.
Yeah,
right?
It is. If you can, if that can work out, it is nice. And I know the majority of the people you do retirement income planning for are couples, at least
Sure.
starting out when, in retirement. And, you just have to be prepared for the loss of a spouse. We've done shows on that. But today we're focusing on before retirement. How do you know you're ready to retire for those that are getting close, right?
Yep. But let me take a step back, Tony.
Okay.
Let's talk about red flags when you're not ready to retire.
Oh, yeah,
before we
that's
kind of do
true.
that. And because everyone wants to retire, believe me, everyone comes in there. And one
Sure.
thing I'm probably finding out more and more are people wanting to retire sooner rather than later. I mean, now people are looking to retire in their early to mid 60s because they want to enjoy their 60s. But here's a few things to kind of look at. If you're going to rely solely on Social Security for your actual income, if it's a majority of your income, you're not ready to retire. I'll just kind of tell you that. because it's not going to be able to keep up with inflation and be able to keep up with the needs that you actually need to be able to meet.
Right.
If you have to take over more than 5% of your actual savings on an annual basis, which would include Social Security plus this in order to get to your income needs, you're not ready to retire either. You're probably going to have an issue of running out of money.
Yeah.
If you have debt, significant debt, you are not ready to retire. You want to go into retirement with the least amount of debt as possible. And if you have a lot of debt out there, whether it's student loans, whether it's it could even be a house or a mortgage, it could be car loans,
Credit
it could
card.
be other credit cards.
Yeah.
You're not ready to be able to retire. The other part of it is if you have to be in a situation where your portfolio is so aggressive for you in order to make retirement, you're probably not ready to retire.
Right.
Because one of the things that will happen is when you go into retirement, your portfolio is actually going to get more conservative, not more aggressive. So those are some red flags that if you answer really yes to any of those questions, then you're probably not ready to retire. Again, obviously, you want to work with a financial advisor that can help guide you on that. But I think those are some things to think about that, hey, I'm not ready to retire, some of those red flags. Let's go the other way, Tony. What are some, key indicators that you are ready to retire, right? And I think the first thing you really have to be able to do, and, a lot of the clients we work with know this, you really have to have a detailed budget, right? Of what's actually going to be able to, what is your budget? How much do you truly need in order to make sure that you're going to make that month's, income amount, right? So your basic living cost, right? Whether it's housing, your food, your utilities, healthcare is a big part of that. That is a monthly budget. Whether you want to go, Joe just talked about Advantage or a Medigap or what we call supplement. Let me kind of tell you one of the biggest issues that I have with people is they don't plan for inflation. That's the first part. And the second part is they don't have things in their budget like travel, like taxes. All that should be part of your monthly budget.
And inflation, right?
Inflation's a big one.
Yeah.
But when we start talking, let me just say, for an example, you need $5,000 a month for your budget. It should include your travel in there that you want to do throughout the year. And it should actually have the taxes in there that you might have to pay. Maybe you own your home. Now you have property taxes. You don't want to be in a situation where you're taking, say, 4% out of your portfolio and you call in every January, by the way, I need another $10,000 to pay my property tax. That should be part of your budget. And again, that's something I think that a lot of people don't realize. By coming in and taking your monthly income and then getting all these little one-offs, that adds up and can really destroy, your income plan to make sure that you're in a situation not to run out of money later on in retirement.
Well, and that's the biggest fear people have, isn't it, Cory? Running out of money in retirement. And you want to make sure you're not going to do that. So if if you struggle to pay your bills before retirement, or if you have, as you mentioned earlier, debt, or if you don't know how much you're going to need in retirement, you're probably not ready. You need to work with a financial services professional like yourself to get it figured out, get on the right path. Correct?
That is correct. And when I try to talk with people, budget means budget. You can't become the federal government where you can actually be in a situation where you owe money, right? Where
Right.
where you're actually in a negative year in and year out. Eventually, you're going to have zero, or you're going to run out of money. So I can't stress the importance to be able to make sure that you know exactly what your budget's going to be, so you don't have to come in and do all these one-offs. And the other part of it is that kind of goes with this is if you have an emergency fund, which means you have anywhere from 6 to 12 months of your budget already saved. Now you tap into that if something does happen. Air conditioner goes out. You need a new roof. things like that that we can plan with. And what you should be able to do is every month, part of your budget should be to supply your emergency fund. That should be part of the budget. So you're not in situations where you have to come in and keep tapping your money, right? We kind of talked about earlier, if you have to take more than 5% out, then you're probably not in a good situation. But let's just say you want to use a 4% rule and you want $50,000 a year, to come out of your savings or out of your retirement savings. That basically means you need to have $1.25 million saved.
Wow.
That's what it's the one part about finances, Tony, it's math is pretty simple.
Yeah. Yep.
It really is.
It's straightforward. The math is the math. The numbers don't lie, right?
That's exactly right.
Right.
So we can put together the income plans and tell you pretty quick whether or not you're going to be in a good situation or a bad situation. But the one thing you don't want to do, and here's the one thing that I always hear a lot. Well, I want to retire in my 60s so we can go out and do everything.
Mm-hmm.
I want to spend more money in my 60s than I do in my 70s or 80s.
Right.
And a lot of times what happens with that, Tony, is A, that's not the truth. B, you're going to have inflation, which means even though you might think you might not need enough money later on, you will, because things will cost more.
Yep.
And instead of traveling, odds are you might be spending more on healthcare.
It's true. Healthcare and retirement. What's the number now? They say the average couple from 65 on or during their retirement will spend over $300,000 out of pocket. That doesn't include what Medicare covers, right?
Right.
So,
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, that's a very important thing to be able to think about.
Right.
Now, if you're in a situation where you've eliminated your debt, you have no high interest credit cards, maybe your mortgage is paid off or about paid off. Basically, you're in a situation where you're going to be debt free. You're ready to retire. It makes it so much simpler. It makes it so much simpler when you don't have to pay that mortgage payment, or if you don't have credit card payments. That means you've probably done two things. You spend within your means, you've saved, and you understand the value of getting out of debt. It's so important to be able to get out of debt, and especially when you're going into retirement, right? Now, when we start talking about income sources, you want reliable income sources. You want Social Security. You want pensions. Maybe you have some investments in annuities. But then you also might have dividends from your investments, or back to that 4% rule. You want to make sure that the income plan that you have in place is reliable. It's so important. If you're working with an advisor, we're going to have that income plan, part of that. Part of the strategy, Tony, could be you delay Social Security. Everyone's situation is different. What are you really trying to be able to accomplish? A lot of people think that when I retire, I have to take Social Security. That's not necessarily the case. That's why it's so important if we put together an income plan, and if we know that before you're ready to, you think you want to retire, work with an advisor 5 to 10 years before you want to retire. Your plan's going to be so much more solid.
Yeah, you've got to work out how to maximize Social Security, look at spousal benefits, and we've done whole shows on that, many of them, because it's so critical. Listeners and viewers can go back in the archives or go to any of the major podcasting sites and check out those shows, or look back at the catalog of shows on YouTube. But I think it's so important to make sure you do those things, like maximize your Social Security, take into account healthcare costs, and really trying to go it alone. I wouldn't want to try to figure all this out and risk my retirement without working with a professional who does this every day. I'm only going to retire once, as I always say. My wife and I, we're only going to go through this process once. You're doing it each and every day, Cory, you and your team there at Safe Harbor. So it's so important to work with a fiduciary who's going to look out for your best interests and really maximize your retirement. And a lot of people are surprised. They want to retire right away, and they think they're going to have to wait 5-6 more years, but they could retire tomorrow. Sometimes it's the opposite. Now I want to retire tomorrow, but I'm going to have to work a couple more years, right?
It's exactly right. Everyone's situation is different. A lot of it has to do is at the end of the day, Tony, it all boils down to how well you've saved.
Right.
It really
True.
does. It
True.
really does. How well you've saved. The other part of it is we start talking about savings and investments, is you do want to make sure that you're allocated the correct way. Every year you should perform your own risk tolerance. That's what we do with our clients. And then we might reallocate them. As they age or as you get closer to retirement, odds are you want to be a little bit more conservative and you want your portfolio to kind of mirror where you are in your life. The days of being maybe 80% stocks are probably not going to be the case when you're retired. Again, it depends on how much money you're taking out of your investments. Everyone's situation is different, but odds are you're going to be more conservative heading into there. So make sure make sure that you're allocated the correct way, heading into retirement. And of course, once you are retired, right? Healthcare is a big one. We talked about it today. Obviously, a lot of people want to wait until the age of 65 to retire because then they can go on to Medicare.
Right.
But if, there's so many situations where one spouse is 65, the other spouse is 62 or 63. They both want to retire at the same time. Well, you still got to find healthcare coverage in order to fill that time frame until you can go on to Medicare. You don't want to be in a situation where you don't have healthcare. You don't know what tomorrow brings you. So it's very important to be able to make sure that you have healthcare, you have a healthcare plan.
Yeah.
And a healthcare plan is not just Medicare or out-of-pocket cost. You also have to start thinking about is what happens if I go into some type of long-term care facility or I go into assisted facility later on in life. What's that going to do for me? What kind of impact is that going to have on me? But more importantly, what type of impact might that have on my living spouse?
Sure.
If something happens to me and I end up spending a lot more money in order to take care of me and my, because I'm in a long-term care facility.
Yeah.
So you really need to be able to start thinking about that as well, right?
Right.
Taxes. You have to have a tax plan. If you think you have a good tax plan going into retirement on how everything's going to be executed, on how you're going to pay less taxes in retirement, then you're ready to retire. And taxes are always a big part of anything. It's not, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. I think that's so important to be able to make sure you're diversified, from a tax plate. Make sure that all your money's not coming out of your IRA in retirement.
Yeah, that's a big one. And tax planning for the future is huge. And that has to be part of the plan. Where are my accounts? Is the money I'm going to need to live on in retirement taxable? Do I have any in a non-tax bucket? That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I think the last thing we're going to kind of wrap up here with, Tony, is basically your estate plan.
Sure.
Do you have a will in place? Do you have a trust in place if that's one of the ways that you want to go? And that's something that we could definitely discuss with you. Do you have beneficiaries set up on all your accounts? It's so important that, everything's set up the correct way. Again, we don't know how long we're going to be here. You just want to make sure it goes the way that you want to in the most tax efficient way to your beneficiaries. And the last thing part of this estate plan is you want to make sure that all of your, that you have your financial and healthcare power of attorneys. You have your living wills.
Yep.
A common theme that I don't think a lot of people realize is when I move to, and maybe I go down to Florida or I go out to Arizona, is you're going to definitely need new healthcare directives when you're in that particular. Each state's different.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that, again, if you're working with an advisor, they're going to be able to look at your situation and be able to provide you things that you should think about that you might need updated because of your new living arrangements.
Yeah, there you go. Well, hey, we're out of time for today's show. Now, I have to ask our listeners and viewers, do you want some help estimating your specific retirement number and getting that plan in place? Cory, you're here for them. How can our listeners get a hold of you?
Yeah, for our listeners out there, just give us a call at 614-760-0670, or again, you can visit our website at safeharboroh.com. We're here to help make sure that you're going to pass that financial fit test, that you're ready to retire. Just give us a call, schedule a complimentary, no obligation meeting, with us. And we're here to help and guide you to make sure you have the retirement that you want.
All right. Sounds good. Great show today, Cory. And that does it for today's episode of Financially Fit Radio with our host, Cory Sickles.
Thank you for joining us for Financially Fit Radio. Don't head into retirement without a strategy that addresses both income and taxes. For more information, please contact Cory Sickles at Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors at 614-760-0670 or visit safeharboroh.com now. Join us again soon for another episode of Financially Fit Radio.
Investment advisory services are offered by Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, LLC, and SEC Investment Advisor. Insurance products and services are offered through Safe Harbor Retirement Group, LLC, an affiliated company. Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Safe Harbor Retirement Group, LLC, are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any government agency. All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.